Jacob Hinkle here. I just wanted to make a quick video, show folks how to integrate an Axis Network Video Door Station, whether that be an A8105 or an 8004. I'm sure there'll be more to come in the future, but as of right now, it covers those two devices with a Cisco Unified Communication Manager. So this is not, these devices are capable of peer-to-peer calling with some of the more intelligent SIP devices that can take a direct SIP call, but this is for integration with an actual enterprise phone system. So a little bit more robust. We can do a lot better patterns when someone presses the door button, for example, on who it rings to and how it rings and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to talk about the basic setup, so IP address and gateway, make sure those are in there. There's a pretty high likelihood that if you're in a call manager, your call manager is not on the same subnet as where your video door phones will be. Make sure you have your default gateway and everything mapped in the device appropriately there. In this example, we did use FQDNs instead of IP addresses, so I just have a quick screenshot here from the System Options Network TCP/IP Advanced tab, populating internal DNS servers to make sure that the private DNS is mapped to the private IP address of the call manager clusters. So let's go ahead and get started from there. On the SIP settings tab, so we need to go to the VoIP tab and then the SIP settings tab, we can enable SIP. Your SIP port default 5060, and if using TLS 5061 are in here. If we need to, if we're using a non-default port setup for any reason, we're not using 5060 and 5061, let's make sure to map those and change those over here. If you are using Call Manager in the cloud or exposed to the internet and you're connecting offsite without VPN or what have you, might need to use something like Stun. In this case, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but we're going to leave those options disabled because we are not traversing a NAT. The overview tab here is pretty, gives you a lot of information at a glance, but we can see that we have SIP enabled now using 5060. I already have the account configured in the bottom, but the next step on getting things going here will be hopping down to the account settings tab. On account settings, we're going to add a new account. We will set this as the default account instead of peer-to-peer. Being registered to the call manager, we're going to have a lot more options for when we press the button, how it dials groups and that sort of thing. So made it the default account. The name here is for our reference only. That does not affect registration with the call manager in any way. The user ID under account credentials, however, does. One of the important things to remember about Call Manager and how it integrates with the Axis Video Door Stations, the Axis Video Door Stations are going to use digest authentication with Call Manager. So that's important. You cannot use basic authentication when doing this integration. So make sure that you have, when on the Call Manager side, I'll get to that here in a minute, but make sure that we are using digest and not the basic authentication, the basic password fields. I'm not going to use the user ID as the authentication ID with Call Manager because my extension does not match the authentication credentials that we're using in this example. So I'll show you where these match up in a second. The caller ID does not have to match up with anything. That's just for sending with the SIP call. It doesn't actually affect registration with Call Manager at all. In this case, we do have two SIP servers in our Call Manager cluster. Since we set up DNS on the other tab, I've used the fully qualified domain names here. These can also be an IP address if you're not using DNS and FQDNs to map these, but recommend it if the Call Manager IPs ever do need to change. It's a lot easier to not have to go back and update all your devices. So here I can see I've already got a registered status 200, which is okay. So the phone is registered up at this point with Call Manager. This is assuming obviously that the Call Manager configuration portion is already done. So probably see a 404 or something if you're doing this first before the Call Manager setup. I don't have a screenshot of it here, but on the network tab we can enable SIP-S and SRTP. Those are options in this device, fully supported. Highly recommended. I'm not going to go through that in this example because it's, again, not what this video is made for, but they're on the network tab here if you're looking to use those. If we do have any problems and want to look at troubleshooting, Once everything is set up on both sides, if we haven't gotten registration, we can go under System Options, Support, Logs and Reports, and Information. Hit that System log there. It'll give you a pop-out with some plain text. Scroll down to the bottom. The bottom will be the most recent information about why you have not registered up. If you have a 404 or something like that, check your digest authentication parameters. The username is case sensitive, so make sure that you've got that matched up perfectly. Hopping over to the Cisco side, I did not have access to the call manager for this deployment, so I just grabbed the Axis SIP setup guide. Can be kind of hard to find on the internet, so I just have the screenshots here from that guide from Axis when they did their CUCM integration. So we're going to start off making a phone security profile. Pretty simple here. We have to choose advanced under the third-party SIP device. There's a basic option, an advanced option. We tried basic SIP phone, and we tried basic authentication not using digest and could not get the phone to register. So don't waste the time. Hop over to third-party advanced SIP device, and we will use digest as well. Under the phone security profile, go ahead and give it a name and enable digest under that. Inside of the A8105 or the A8004, you can choose whether you're using TCP or UDP. The simple way to make sure this works is just choose TCP and UDP under transport type there. We're going to use the default 5060 for the port and go ahead and click Save. Under user management, we will go to end user. The user ID here is what has to match the authentication ID back in the Axis network device. The password and confirm password field here do not matter because we are using digest. So down at the bottom there, the digest credentials, that must match the password that was inside of the Axis device in this case. Last name does not actually authenticate or affect registration at all, but is for our use. So go ahead and populate that as well and click Save. Now we're going to go to Device and go to the Phone tab and add the new third-party advanced SIP device. So go ahead and click that in the drop-down and click Next. This MAC address absolutely must match the specific device that you are creating here when you're making this new phone. If it doesn't match or there's a typo, you will not get registered up. Please make sure that you have matched that and documented that perfectly and clearly. That may be one of your issues if your phone is not registering. So check that the appropriate extension, digest credentials, and MAC address all match up. It's a pretty simple integration. As long as those things match up, you should be good to go. Again, phone button template, we're going to use that third-party advanced SIP device. Since we are using digest here, we can click the anonymous button under owner. We're going to set the device security profile, the SIP profile, and the digest user here. So matching that up again under the digest user there, clicking that and matching everything up in the drop down is pretty simple. Save and apply that configuration, and then we're going to go set up our DNs. So DNs should be the last step here. Click on your first DN, get your extension matched up inside of your DN, and you should be good to go. So if you save it here and go back to the Axis device overview, VoIP overview tab, you should show as registered at this point. If you don't, feel free to reboot the network video door station, but it shouldn't matter. It should just register up. Beyond that, you should be at the end of the integration. Thanks.